Tim Huber. I'm counsel for the Lebanon Valley Rail Trail Group, and we're here today to discuss an issue involving the proposed trail through the Meily farm in North Lebanon Township.
John Wingert, President, Lebanon Valley Rails to Trails.
Todd Dissinger, Treasurer, Lebanon Valley Rails and Trails.
Welcome. And then if you'd like to just talk
Yeah, if
to...
I could briefly summarize, some time ago, and I didn't put together a timeline, but I'm going to say sometime more than a year ago, it became apparent that there was a difference of opinion between the rail trail group, really, and the county, which the rail trail group acts on behalf of, regarding ownership and the right to use the rail bed that is contiguous to the Meily farm. If I could try to distill it down to its simplest terms, and without trying to be an advocate, but just explain the issue, the rail trail through the county acquired and bought from Reading Railway Company a rail bed some years ago that is contiguous to the Meily farm. The Meily family, I believe, disputes that the county owns the rail bed, and perhaps further disputes that the county has the right to the exclusive use of the rail bed based on their historical use of the rail bed for some years in conjunction with their farm. I would say over the last year or so, we've engaged in negotiations in an effort to reach a consensus of how to solve that disagreement. We've made some headway, but as I read the situation at the present time, the LVRT believes that a shared use of the rail bed is not functionally suitable for a recreational rail trail. And when I say a shared use, I mean that rail trail users and farm equipment would both be open to use the length of the rail bed at the same time. We don't view that, generally speaking, as very functional. The Meilys prefer to have that. We've suggested crossings over the rail bed. They don't believe that that is going to suit their needs. So in my estimation, we've kind of reached an impasse here that isn't going to be resolved by mutual agreement of the parties, and instead is going to require the court to resolve who owns this rail bed and what rights the Meily family has to the use of the rail bed. And so we're here today, and at least speaking for me, this doesn't have to be antagonistic between the county and the rail group and the Meilys. I believe there's a sincere disagreement between the parties as to what their rights are. We can't solve that, and so, as sometimes is necessary, we believe the court has to solve it for us. And so we're here today asking for authorization to proceed in that manner. Generally speaking, a complaint would have to be filed with the protonotary. The Meily family would have a right to retain counsel, who they're presently represented by Attorney Christensen, to file an answer to that complaint. Some discovery, which would be an exchange of information through the formal court processes, would be required or perhaps needed, and thereafter a trial would take place where evidence and witnesses are presented and the judge would make a decision. The timing of that is difficult to predict. In normal circumstances, I would say 4 to 6 months would be optimistic. It could be longer. Now, an alternative, or at least some interim relief, might be sought by way of a preliminary injunction hearing in which either party could file a motion with the court and ask for interim relief that would deal with rights to move ahead with trail development, rights to use of the trail, which the Meilys might ask for. So that might be some interim effort that would be undertaken before a final adjudication. I can't say with certainty what course that would take. It would depend somewhat on how the issues are framed.
But in simplistic framing of this, we are just trying to find out who owns this for purposes of further conversation and resolving the...
I'd say more towards resolving the disagreement. Yes, who owns it and
okay.
arises out of that, who has the rights to use it in the manner they see fit, yes.
Whoever would like to speak, this would be a good time, I guess.
Okay, I'm Jessica Kohler, and I live in North Lebanon Township.
Okay, thank you.
And I want to thank Joelle and Litz for allowing the town to view the trail and to speak to us and hear our concerns. And we've been using the abandoned railroad bed for almost 40 years as a way of getting to and from the various fields and pastures on either side of the railroad. We voiced grave concerns for the supposed solutions that have been proposed as alternatives in place of the use of the railroad bed. We have also attempted to propose other compromises, but obviously haven't come to any agreement on that. We're very concerned that if we're unable to use the railroad bed, the farm will not be able to effectively and efficiently be farmed. The farm is preserved with streams and wetlands and 2 locks for the Union Canal, which greatly limit our ability to travel between the various areas on the farm in the fields. If we're unable to access all areas of the 130 plus acres, there may be no other alternative than to divide the farm into several parcels, which of course we don't want to do. My grandparents would not want that. They were, upstanding members of the Lebanon community involved with baseball and the Historical Society and the Union Canal Tunnel Park for many, many years. They were very proud of their farm and understood the necessity of maintaining working farms in the Lebanon County. If the rail trail comes through the property with the solutions proposed for just, possibly 2 crossings, maintaining a fully functioning farm would not be a viable option. And Joellen did send us a summary of her visit and her observations from that visit, and we do have just a couple other points on that.
Once again, I'd like to thank Joel and Litz for coming out and taking the time to come out and observe and walk the railroad bed on November 10th. Made the observations that you have before you. This morning, when she came out and observed it, she was observing it from the standpoint of our family farming it when we live across Long Lane, so we would have to be getting access to the farm from Long Lane. This morning, I would like to discuss the impact this will have strictly for the Meily farm, Richard Meily farm. And I would like you to take your map and follow me, if you will, please. Starting at the southern end. Christine Meily, who is Richard and Lois' daughter, who had power of attorney, put on the map where all the crops and pastures are. And if you see at the beginning, there is cropland all the way down at Tunnel Hill Road. Could be accessed by going out to Farm Lane, but there would need to be a crossing across the railroad trail to get to it. The next farm field going up, the next crop field, is separated by locks from the Union Canal. So once again, you would have to go out to Farm Lane, cross the pasture, and have a crossing across the railroad trail to get to that field. Those are impractical but not impossible. When we try to go up to the northern fields, the cropland up in the northern section, closer to Long Lane. Now we're considering this farmer down here at these buildings that you see. We're forgetting about the fact that we're farming it. We're figuring only on this farmer farming it. To get to those northern fields, the only way, if he cannot use the railroad bed, the only way to get there is by going through the pastures with the wetlands and crossing over the streams that are cattle crossing. This is a cattle crossing. All the equipment would have to drive through there. If that is not possible, the only other way to get there would be on the outline that I gave you there. Would be road travel, 2.5 miles, Long Lane, Russell Road, Hill Church Road, and Tunnel Hill Road, to go around by the roads. This is a heavily traveled road. It would impact traffic, it would create angry motorists, and we travel, at this point we travel, if you take your map and look going on north there, The yellow line, we travel from there up to those buildings that you see in the background there at this point in time. And it's not unusual for a car to think that they're in too big a hurry and try to pass in that short distance. All these roads are in no passing zones. So I feel that eventually there would inevitably be an accident. This would also impact the farmer because he would have to travel with each one of his wagon loads that entire distance if he can't cross those streams. Now, if you look at point 10, where Joe Ellen Litz looked up whether we could, what the cattle crossings actually are, and I would like to point out that to you. They are DP 6. What it says, the GP6 is for ag crossing and ramps in which the bed and banks of the stream are somehow hardened to pass hoof-foot vehicle traffic through the water. The GP6 does not afford the permittee the ability to muck out the stream channel 50 feet up or downstream of the crossing. Now from this, I think the county commissioners feel that we can drive through those streams. I do not think that is a possibility with the kind of heavy equipment that will be using it. We are in this farm is in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Should we even be traveling through that stream bed with equipment hauling manure, fertilizers, and sprays? By doing this, there's a higher risk of polluting the waters, which is the real reason for the stream bank fencing and the cattle crossings that are built to DEP's regulations. Hope that the Rails to Trails people would reconsider allowing the farmer, whether it be the Joe Meily farm farming it, or whether it be the farmer living on this particular farm farming it, allow them to coexist on that rail bed wide enough to be safe, so that there would not be the possibility of them being cut off completely from the farm being cut completely in half by no access to the other fields. That is our main concern. Our biggest concern is what's going to happen. I just do not see it being possible or being allowed by DEP.
I put this in writing because I'm extremely passionate about the situation, because it could potentially ruin my livelihood in addition to several other families. Agriculture is a big industry here in Lebanon County. We actually are one of the larger dairy farms in Lebanon County, and this has the potential really to destroy our business in addition to the other local businesses in Lebanon County with which we do business. As we discussed with Commissioner Litz when she was willing to come out there, we're not crop farmers. So you have to understand that we don't take our equipment just one time, do our planting, one more other time, do the harvesting. Because we're a dairy farm, we do forages for our animals, which means like for the hay crop rotation, it could be as many as 4 times, hopefully a year, depending on the weather. There's silage, corn silage, oatlage, triticale, numerous times when we are going up and down. And we explained to her that we have tractors running there every 15 minutes, which is why some of the discussions came right away with Lebanon Valley Rails to Trails, because there is a major safety concern of walkers and hikers the same time we have that big equipment going back and forth. So if you take that away from us, we will ultimately, as was stated, no matter which direction we go on double-lane roads that are no passing zones, it is 2.5 miles. We do not want to be a negative effect on the community, but at this point, if we lose the use of the railroad bed, we will be forced to do that. It will have a negative, huge negative impact on the entire community. We are asking that you as county commissioners consider other alternatives. When we were at the Rails to Trails meeting, on September 7th. There's questions of obstacles with phase 8. They assured us that PennDOT is very, very cooperative and more than willing to work on alternate routes as they need to. If they are willing to do that for phase 8, why would they not be willing to do the same thing for phase 7? We are asking the county commissioners that you would take our business, our livelihoods, and the safety of the people, and to decrease the negativity to our entire community by forcing us to go around on those main roads.
I'd like to start by thanking especially for the invitation. Jessica, Dan, and Karen walked with me on the trail. It was lovely, and I really appreciated that opportunity. I had been to the farm numerous times and was quite familiar with it, but I admit I never walked the trail, and so that was a unique experience for me. And I especially noticed some things like the sewer line, etc., that were there. When I wrote a letter to the Meileys, actually Richard, and expressed hopefully we could come to some compromise. And what ended up happening, Richard passed away, and it was very sad for everyone, and we, respected the family and allowed them some time to grieve, but eventually the invitation was extended for me to go out and talk. So that's how I got there. It's really interesting because both grandparents were farmers, and I spent many days, every Sunday for sure, and other days besides over the summer, helping out my grandfather who lived in Kimmerlings with his farm, whether it was picking cherries and strawberries or plucking chickens, whatever it is. I have very fond memories of the farm. This is really near and dear to me. I have many things in my background, and some people know, some people don't know about the farming. That led me to help bring farmland preservation to Lebanon County. Before I was ever a commissioner, I was with the League of Women Voters, and we hosted a meeting to introduce the subject. And as a commissioner, I was able to help to vote to take out bond issues to forward farm preservation in Lebanon County, so we do have places to grow food. And I even served on the local farmland preservation board as well as the statewide farmland preservation board. So I really take farming seriously, is what I'm trying to share. I also, many people know, take the environment very seriously. And I take my duty to promote tourism and recreation and so many things. It's a job that entails a lot, but our backgrounds bring us each from a different perspective. So I tried to share some of mine just to hopefully help you understand that this is a sincere thing that I'm saying and doing. So prior to going out to the Meily farm, I was able to do some research, and I involved many departments to ask questions and gather information, and some of the findings are in the packet that I handed out today. Essential to know is that in 1868, John Baumberger sold the entire and exclusive possession to the railroad and their successors or assigns in perpetuity for $4,000. In 1868. I have no idea how that would translate today. It could be $4 million, but he got a sizable sum. Previously, the county did offer to retain the original crossings of which Dan, I think, told me there were 3, and the one was under the bridge. So when that was closed for various reasons, there were wetlands involved, equipment got wider, and eventually a sewer line ran under there. So that is not a viable crossing anymore. So they were down to 2 and created 2 additional crossings. So there are now 4. All that being said, the county cooperated with farmland preservation and actually encouraged farming. And I don't want this to get lost, because I don't want it to be an us and them that we're against farming. The county commissioners have encouraged farming through farmland preservation, and actually preserved the Meily farm with taxpayer funds at $236,163. But in that preservation, part of the paperwork you have, the trail itself, the rail bed, I should call it, was not preserved. That is clearly stated within the documents. I didn't know how hard it was for anybody to find all that, so I provided some copies for you. The railroad or their agents paid taxes for their linear parcel through 2012. Again, a summary of those tax payments, the records from the county perspective. Now, we don't have the school district or the municipality, we have the county, so that's what you'll see. Is a summary there. And that goes back, and the railroad had some agents that operated on their behalf, so their names may appear, but it's all the railroad. Next, you heard that the county purchased the rail bed directly from the railroad. That was at a cost of $87,500. And that was paid with a DCNR grant. Part of the stipulations on that DCNR grant are that we can't change the use for which we purchased the property. Very similar to a bond. You make a commitment, that's what you have to do. So therefore, we couldn't open it up for travel with motorized vehicles. We purchased it for the trail. So at this time, it is my understanding that 3 entities, Lebanon County, of course, Mr. Huber here is representing also the rail trail, but also North Lebanon Township and the local Farmland Preservation Board have all reviewed the documents and agree the county owns the trail. In 2013, after the reassessment, again, the county encouraged farming, supported farmers through a clean and green program with an agreement, in this case, that excludes the rail bed, and to this day reduces taxes on the main farm. Now, what had happened was we discovered that the deeds did not close, and they have to close. So they were worked on and closed. And so you will see a couple of different variations of very minute numbers along the way. But in essence, the maps clearly show, and the written word clearly shows that those things were not preserved nor charged taxes on.